Good evening and welcome to our regular City Council meeting for Monday, February 15th, 2021. I'll now call this meeting to order with a roll call from Madam Clerk.
Miller.
Here.
DeBoer.
Here.
Cruz.
Here.
Harding.
Here.
Dara.
Here.
Sires.
Here.
Dunn.
Here.
All members present, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Before beginning, I just want to note that we are back in the council chambers, but partially meeting remotely as well in accordance with the provisions of the Iowa Public Information Board due to the ongoing coronavirus pandemic. So with that, moving into approval of minutes, is there a motion to approve our regular meeting of February 1st?
So moved.
So moved.
Motion and seconded. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, that does pass. That moves us over into agenda revisions. Do we have any revisions for tonight, Madam Clerk?
I have no agenda revisions, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, ma'am. And starting out for this night, we have our public forum, which has been moved to the front of the meeting from a council vote last meeting. And so with that, I'll open up for public forum where speakers will have one opportunity for up to 5 minutes to speak on topics germane to city business. So do we have speakers for tonight? Yes, so Mr. Stoddard, come forward, please. And Mr. Stoddard did provide me with some presentation slides, which I have approved for him to show tonight. So the floor is yours, Mr. Stoddard. Name and address for the record, please.
Jay Stoddard, 228 Mary Hill Drive, Cedar Falls, Iowa. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and City Council and staff and everybody at home. Our board was going over with some of our new board members a lot of the different projects and things that we've done over the years. And so as some of the new board members were commenting on how they had no idea that we had contributed to this project, Pete Downs and a lot of the other board members said, you know, we ought to have some sort of a PowerPoint program that would show not only our new board members, possibly some of the staff here and the council members, what we've done as far as economic impact for Cedar Falls with Sturgis Falls. Let's see if I can. For over 45 years, the Sturgis Falls celebration has provided an economic impact to Cedar Falls as measured by studies from the Iowa Economic Development Authority and the UNI Scholar Works. These studies show the money spent in the community by the attending public contribute an economic impact ranging from $4.2 million to $6.6 million in 2013. Now, these are just two studies that I pulled up, but there are others. But I mean, it's the point is, millions and millions of dollars are brought into the community because of Sturgis Falls. Let's see, in addition, the celebration takes its profits and pours them back into the community projects. And I'm just going to go through these. There's $10,000 for the Falls Aquatic Center, $10,000 for the Veterans Memorial Park, $10,000, did I go buy one there? Oh, $10,000 for the Cedar Falls Tourism Conference Room, $10,000 for the Gateway Large Shelter, $10,000 for the Senior Center, $10,000 for the Public Library, $10,000 for the Skateboard Park. That's an interesting one, but we did it. $25,000 for the Recreation Center, and $50,000 for the Overman Park Band Shell. And there's over $50,000 of underground electrical improvements for sound, lighting, security systems for the public's continued use. Oops, make sure I've got the right. Okay, excuse me. We have hundreds of thousands of dollars that we've given in scholarships. We've went from 2 scholarships per year to 3 scholarships, and now I believe we're at 2. It's fluctuated with different times. Given $10,000 to the police and fire department equipment as requested. Sturgis Falls celebration has built up the Gateway Park venue with over about $250,000 worth of electrical underground infrastructure for sound, lighting, security, ground stabilizing asphalt, and a permanent staging for all Cedar Falls organizations to use into the future. No public tax dollars were spent to develop the venue we have today. All of this is accomplished with community donations, volunteers, proceeds from merchandise, food and beverage sold at the festival, and no one is paid a salary. Best of all, there are no admission fees to the public. So this is information that I thought was important that could remind those that remember and those that haven't heard about it, what we've done. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Stoddard. And thank you to the Sturgis Falls Celebration Group for all the work you've done over the years and for the indelible impact you have on our community. So truly thank you from the community. Additional speakers for tonight? Mr. Sharp, come forward, please. And name and address for the record, please.
Rick Sharp, 1623 Birch Street, Cedar Falls. First of all, I'd like to thank the majority of the council that did respond to my email 2 weeks ago in regards to that little confusing vote we had about adding the additional 3 minutes on to the end of the council meeting where it passed one way 6-1 and then 5-2 it didn't pass. So I thank the majority of you that did respond to try to explain and actually acknowledge it was a confusing vote. Secondly, I'd like to thank Jennifer for responding to my email about getting the payroll overtime stats, especially for the public safety department. I still think it, and I noticed tonight we changed the wording to bills and claims. When I requested 2 weeks ago, I was making that more as a request to actually include payroll into the council minutes because payroll is a large part of the city's budgets, and it won't add multiple pages to whatever the hundreds of pages we already have for the bills on there. The document I received was just 31 pages and that encompassed a full year. If we get caught up to date every 2 weeks, the payroll period, it should only be a couple pages. And I think the public, the citizens, you as council members should have a right to know and see exactly what's being spent, because we know management salaries are set, they're not going to vary, but the actual hourly employees, union employees, when they get double time, triple time, time and a half, I think everybody should have a right to see what's going on there, why it's happening, and that's the reason why I am requesting it to be included into future council minutes so everybody knows what they're voting on. And if they have questions, because I know in previous years, it was no problem for some council members or a previous mayor to point out how much money firefighters were making. You know, they had that right, boom, just right there, and they actually made some comments like they don't even live in Cedar Falls, which to me was irrelevant to the topic at hand to begin with. So again, I want to give thanks where I felt the thanks were owed, but I'm also asking again for the city, for you, Mr. Mayor, to actually include payroll starting effective soon, to start adding that into the council agenda, because I believe it won't add any additional more paperwork to review. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. And from looking at the ordinance that talks about bills and claims going before council, as I understand it, it specifically notes that sort of information isn't to be included in the council packet. So we would need to clarify that. Do you have any insight on that for tonight?
Well, one of the things that I will let you know is actually legal staff and myself did converse after last time. And one, we were thinking, okay, well, let's really put on there what the ordinance says, bills and claims. But I think we're also looking at, from a legal standpoint, about payroll. And what I mean by that is it gross payroll, net payroll? Because we are debating whether net payroll is actually a public record or not. Now, we all understand gross payroll is, because we have a payroll resolution every year, we publish the salaries every year, but we are discussing, because again, people would have things on their paycheck that is not public information, about what they might contribute to. Are they contributing to a family health insurance plan or a single? I mean, so we're kind of having those discussions about what legally we would be able to provide.
And would that also include if they're having their wages garnished?
Right, exactly. Those things we don't want to, show. And so, like let's say someone's amount did change from one time to the next. I don't want people to assume or try to figure out why it changed. They had a garnishment. They decided to switch to family instead of single. So we are trying to figure out what would actually be the public record
Okay.
piece of payroll.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak for public comment tonight? Okay, seeing none.
We have one in Zoom,
Yes, okay, I'm sorry, I forgot about that. So,
0467.
okay, so I see Mr. Skane, so just name and address for the record, please, sir, and you have 5 minutes. Go right ahead, sir.
Yes, Tim Skane, 2215 Clay Street. Frankly, I like the fact that the public comments have been moved to the head of the agenda because it enables me to look at the agenda and indicate some things about it. One thing that I noticed is that the agenda has item number 4, I believe, about Robert's Rules of Order, and the change that is there is that there will be, as the official one, the 12th version of Roberts, and that's good, but it raises a couple of questions. One, since it is there, then I have a question that I don't think that the council members should have to pay for that. I think that that is a work expense and should be paid for by the city. So it's important that each council member have a copy. Another comment is that if you are using Robert, the 12th edition, then it would necessitate some change in your agenda. For one thing, it would not have the word germane used the way that the city agenda does use it. Roberts provides for situations that are not according to the behavior, and so obviously the word germane should not be used. Then another thing is that Roberts has the provision that each motion is considered separately, and therefore the idea of having the idea of all of the motions in the calendar and resolution area are to be considered as a whole would not be agreed to by the 12th edition of Robert's Rules of Order. And so it should be that the council go back to the point of considering each motion separately. And then another thing is that I looked at the budget, and I can make a comment later, but it seems to me that the budget needs to indicate the proportion of the budget that is committed to the capital improvement projects as opposed to other parts of the budget. So I would hope that that would be considered. But I do appreciate, Mr. Mayor, that we do have the 5 minutes at the beginning. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Skane. And with just a couple of comments for that for Robert's Rules, the books, yes, if council members requested one, then I've provided that with mayor funds. Certainly believe it's important for all members to have a copy, and that can be either the paper copy or the electronic copy if that's easier to search through. And same for the chairs of all of our boards and commissions. Those who have wanted one, I've provided a copy with mayor funds. And then all other boards and commission members have the option of receiving the Robert's Rules in brief, which is it's about $7, $8 as opposed to the $20 for the big book. So there's for that. Then for the germane part, that falls under Rule 2 for the applicability of Robert's Rules of Order. It's under our Admin Policy 7. It says is, in all cases not provided for by the Cedar Falls Code of Ordinances or not specifically provided for in these rules, Robert's Rules of Order shall govern. So in this case, we do have additional rules about the appropriateness or relevance of topics. So that applies over Robert's Rules. And then the last part about the consent calendar, that does appear in Robert's Rules. It's section 41 -32, and that's on page 343. So we do follow that in accordance with the rules. So other speakers for public comment tonight? Yes, Mr. Fryan, please. Name and address for the record.
TJ Fryan, 1319 Austin Way. Just on my way in, I saw the signs. I assume it's for snow removal for the next couple days downtown. Just a technical issue. It said Tuesday the 17th to Wednesday the 18th, but it's the 17th is actually Wednesday and the 18th is Thursday. So just might want to let people know that Tuesday is the 16th and Wednesday is the 17th, just so when they look at it, they don't get confused. They can park somewhere because the sign says they can when the dates are just wrong. So thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fryan. Any other speakers, either in person or on Zoom?
Not on Zoom.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Then that's public forum. So that moves us into our special order of business. Item 2 is a public hearing on the proposed FY22 budget for the city of Cedar Falls. Is there a motion to receive and file proof of publication?
So move.
Second.
Been motioned and seconded. Do we have any written communication filed, Madam Clerk?
We need to take a vote on publication.
Okay, that's right. It's been moved to receive and file proof of publication. And all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
So that passes and now moves us into written communications.
I have no written communications on file, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. For staff comments tonight, we have Director Roden back. You've got the floor, ma'am.
Sure. I know sometimes it can seem like a long process to get here tonight, that we started earlier. So I just thought I'd just kind of remind council about kind of what we did to get to this point and the public. So tonight on the agenda is to approve the budget for fiscal year 22. So that's from July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022. The council back in November did hold 2 goal setting sessions. And that's helpful in that it determines and sets priorities for the upcoming year and financial policies and parameters for the upcoming budget. The CIP was then presented and adopted by council in January, which is a major piece of the budget process. On January 19th, a presentation was given to the Committee of the Whole that summarized the various factors that went into creating the fiscal year 22 budget. Last council meeting, February 1st, the maximum levy hearing was held and the resolution was passed, which was one of the new steps that was started by the state of Iowa last year. And so then that brings us to tonight, which is really the final step and is the formal hearing and adoption of the 22 budget. So the proposed budget before you tonight does set the tax rate at $11.38, which is actually lower than the current year, which is $11.43. But when you couple that tax rate with the rollback factors, you know, we've talked about that before. We want to be straightforward with everybody and what it really means for their property tax bill. That will actually result in a 1.98% increase on residential, a 0.44% decrease on commercial and industrial, and a 5.68% decrease on multi-residential properties. And then after tonight, if there is approval, then we will have the full budget document on our website so people can check that out. But as always, if they have questions about the budget, they can feel free to call me or the finance department here at the city.
Thank you, Dr. Rodenbeck. Before moving to council questions and comments about this, I'll open it up for public comment. Do we have anyone wishing to comment on the budget tonight? I see none from the floor, so any on Zoom?
Jim Skane?
Okay, Mr. Skane, we already have your name and address, so you've got the floor, sir.
Yes, I listened to what Director Rodenberg said, and she did indicate that the capital improvement projects were the predominant part of the budget, but I'd like her to indicate like what the proportion is with regard to the capital improvement as opposed to other part of the agenda of the budget. So that's my question
Okay, thank you, Mr. Skane.
and my comment.
Yes, sir. So for Director Rodenbeck, looking at the totals for, let's say, the operating versus capital improvement, would you be able to give a percentage?
Well, one of the things I was just going to highlight is actually on page 12 of the packet. It does break it down by program, so it breaks it down by public safety, public works, but then there also is the capital project line item. So you'll see in it that the number does show a number of 24.7 million. That would be for capital projects, which is out of a total budget of about 100 million. So, you know, roughly about a fourth of the budget would be for capital projects.
Okay, it's about a quarter. All right, thank you. Any other speakers?
None in Zoom?
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So with none on the floor or electronically, I'll consider the public hearing closed and move us into item E, which is a resolution approving and adopting the FY22 budget for the city of Cedar Falls. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
A motion and seconded. Council discussion? Yes, Councilmember Cyrus, go ahead, sir.
I'd like to just comment on, I believe we should have priorities, and during a pandemic time, it would have been nice to have priorities so that we could save a little money and not pass it on to our residents. I like the state rollback. I do understand that cuts in. We didn't have much discussion on whether we could cut back enough to hold down the tax increase. I think two of the most important things about a council person is to spend taxpayers' funds wisely and not raise their taxes. So those being said, that's the kind of thing I watch out for. Thank you.
Okay, so we are still on a motion and a second to approve and adopt the FY22 budget. So any other comments from council? I see none. Then it's been motioned and seconded, and this requires a roll call vote.
Aye.
Six voting aye, one voting nay, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. That brings us to item 3, which is a public hearing on the proposed plans, specifications, form of contract, and estimate of costs for the 2021 sanitary sewer rehabilitation project. Is there a motion to receive and file proof of publication?
Second.
Been motioned and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
That passes. And do we have any written communications for this, Madam Clerk?
I have no written communications on file, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. So for staff comments tonight, we have Mr. Tolan. So, sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Tonight's public hearing is on the 2021 sanitary sewer rehabilitation project. This project involves installing 6,700 linear feet of cured-in-place lining, 135 service connections, and other associated work. The total estimated cost for this project is $242,000. The project will be funded by the Sanitary Sewer Rental Fund.
Okay, thank you, sir. Do we have any public comments for this item? From the floor, I'm seeing none. From Zoom?
Seeing none?
Okay, so Then I'll consider the public hearing closed for this item and move us to E, which is a resolution approving and adopting the plan, specifications, form of contract, and estimate of cost for the 2021 sanitary sewer rehabilitation project. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
The motion and seconded. Council discussion or questions for Mr. Tolan? Okay. Seeing none, then you're off the hook. It's been motioned and seconded, and this requires a roll call vote.
Aye.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Moving to 4, this is a public hearing on the proposed plan, specifications, form of contract, and estimate of cost for the downtown streetscape and reconstruction project, Phase 2. Is there a motion to receive and file proof of publication?
So move. Second.
Motion and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, so that passes. And are there any written communications filed?
I have no written communications on file, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Staff comments, we have Mr. Claypool tonight. So go ahead, Mr. Claypool.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Tonight is the public hearing for the upcoming Phase 2 for the Downtown Streetscape and Reconstruction Project. And I'll be sharing information on the project designed by Snyder and Associates, the same consultant responsible for Phase 1 of this project. The estimated cost is just under $3.8 million, including the design cost and $375,000 for the pre-order for both the precast concrete twig benches and clay brick pavers due to their long 3 to 4 month lead time. Though that pre-order was approved in the second November meeting of 2020. The funding for this project will be provided from 4 sources: downtown TIF funds, Community Main Street funding, Blackhawk County Gaming Grant funding, and Cedar Falls Utilities. Back in 2014, the city began work with Community Main Street to help identify the character corridors and types of enhancements desired for each block to help set the stage for both public and private projects. Through the details of the district campaign, led by Community Main Street, the overarching city-led projects for the downtown area are beginning to take shape. In conjunction with these projects, we also have seen the private developments, including but not limited to the River Place MU2 building, the plaza on 2nd and State, and the Arabella mixed-use building just north of City Hall, really help solidify this updated aesthetic. Continuing from the first phase of the downtown streetscape and reconstruction last year, the goal of this project was to enhance the connectivity of the side streets and city parking lots in the downtown area by incorporating those same comforting details that are utilized on the parkade, which is also continuing its overhaul through the updated pavers and amenities. Went too far. As seen on this slide, both the Phase 1 and Phase 2 project will be taking many of these outdated and deteriorating materials and updating them with a much more cohesive look. One of the primary improvements made with the selection of material was the brick pavers. When the current in-place pavers were installed in 2005, a concrete brick was chosen, and its lifespan fell short of the expected targeted goal. The new pavers used on Phase 1 and planned for Phase 2 are a clay brick, which will have a much longer expected lifespan than what was originally installed in 2005. With the projects downtown beginning in 2019, we saw the successful undergrounding and lighting of State and Washington streets, as well as 6 streetscape hubs along those streets that had public improvements of trash cans, bikes, bike racks, benches, and other amenities. During last year's project, we saw the full reconstruction of West 2nd and West 3rd Street between Washington and Main Street, while the northern 2 blocks of the Parkade and East 2nd Street between Main and State were updated between the buildings and current existing curb with the new bricks. As for public feedback, the city had worked with Community Main Street and the public through a series of board meetings and public information meetings. And prior to the Phase 1 construction, some of the incorporated feedback consisted of minimizing disruptions to the businesses during construction, material choice of the brick pavers, and even including the full brick on the side streets compared to a brick concrete sidewalk hybrid. As part of the planning and design for the overall project, a collectively agreed upon blend of traditional and contemporary appearance was chosen. The top photo on this slide shows a plan view from above Main Street with the expected red brick between the building and out 8 feet that highlighted the ADA walking path, outlined by that thin tan brick at that 8-foot mark. From the tan out to the curb was a series of gray brick that helped blend some of the streetscaping amenities and those twig benches in that space between. The bottom left and bottom right photos show some of the renderings that were expected, and the bottom middle photo is an actual photo from that Phase 1 construction showing how closely it was able to be matched. Similar full brick installation was extended out onto the Washington and State Street, following the same aesthetic. The scope of work for Phase 2 will pick up from where Phase 1 left off and include more area than Phase 1. This includes streetscaping the remainder of the parkade south from 3rd Street down to 6th Street, the full reconstruction of East 3rd Street, and the 2 blocks of 4th Street from Washington over to State Street with full storm sewer, water main, pavement, and brick pavers between the curb and storefronts. And lastly, West 5th Street will see a full restoration, including a mill and overlay, new curb, and brick between the curb and storefronts. And lastly, the planned schedule for this project has phases 1 through 4 taking place this construction season and stage 5 and 6 in the 2022 construction season. For this summer, we expect the 3 blocks of the parkade to be completed with the updated brick and the 2 blocks of 4th Street, the West 4th and East 4th Street blocks. In the 2022 season, the contractor will resume the work on East 3rd Street and West 5th Street, wrapping up the downtown streetscape and reconstruction project prior to the Main Street reconstruction in the near future. And that concludes the presentation. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Claypool. For council comment and questions, I'll open it for public comment. So you wish to speak on this item? See none from the gallery. Any from Zoom? Okay.
None.
Seeing none. So I'll consider the public hearing closed and move us over into item 4E, which is the resolution approving and adopting the plan specifications, form of contract, and estimate of cost for the downtown streetscape and reconstruction project, Phase 2. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Open it for council discussion and questions. Okay. Seeing none, then thank you, Mr. Claypool. It's been motioned and seconded, and this requires a roll call vote.
Aye.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So that does pass and moves us into old business, which is item 5, passing ordinance 2984, amending Chapter 6, Animals of the Code of Ordinances relative to permitting poultry in residential areas upon its second consideration. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
So moved.
Motion and seconded. Any council discussion? Any public questions or discussion? You can press star 9 on your phone or the raise hand icon. Forgot to mention that earlier. Okay, and I'm seeing none. So it's been motion and seconded and requires a roll call vote.
Aye.
5 voting aye, 2 voting nay, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That brings us over to 6, which is related. It's passing ordinance 2985, amending Chapter 6, Animals of the Code of Ordinances, relative to establishing regulations for rear yard poultry in residential areas upon its second consideration. Is there a motion to approve this item?
So moved.
So moved.
Motion and seconded. Any comments from the public or questions? Seeing none. Any questions or comments from council? Seeing none, so it's been motioned and seconded and requires a roll call vote.
Aye.
5 voting aye, 2 voting nay, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And that takes us to item 7, which is passing ordinance 2983, amending Chapter 15 nuisances of the Code of Ordinances relative to keeping poultry in residential areas upon its second consideration. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
So moved.
Okay, motion and seconded. Council discussion? Questions?
Yeah, I just have a question about all three of these. Is there any mechanism in place or a way that we could, if this passes again next week, in a year, evaluate if this is effective? We've gone from 3 chickens in the backyard to quite a number of animals, and seems like it may be moving a little faster than some people would like. I want to honor the recommendation, but I wouldn't mind building in some sort of follow-up. I don't know how that works, if city staff does that automatically, or if there are issues, you bring it to us, or can we build in a...
Well, the item before us, though, is amending the nuisances. So if we were to change that to include some sort of like a sunset clause or some provision to revisit, then it would move that back to first consideration. So I think it would be appropriate if it's a referral that comes forward, or just an understanding that we will look at that in a year.
Okay.
There's no reason not to.
I'd just like to have that assurance somehow, so that makes sense. Thank you.
So any other questions or comments from council on this? And any from the public? Seeing none, then it's been motioned and seconded and requires a roll call vote.
Aye.
Okay.
5 voting aye, 2 voting nay, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And just for clarification, I think it could be a referral for tonight to have this brought back up in a year. There's no time limit on referrals, so we could put it in and council can approve having this reviewed.
But do that at referral time?
Correct, yeah.
Thank you.
And then you would have your assurance then. Okay, so that was 5 through 7, and now item 8 is passing ordinance 2986, amending Chapter 2 Administration of the Code of Ordinances relative to the applicability of Robert's Rules upon its second consideration. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and seconded.
Second.
Any council discussion or questions?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councilmember Cruz, go ahead, sir.
could we suspend the rules and have a second and third reading together in this, since it's rather simplistic?
Would you like to make a motion for that?
I'm making a motion to that effect.
Okay, so
Suspend the rules.
the motion to suspend the rules and consider this as the second and third reading tonight. Is there a second for that?
Second.
Second.
So motion and seconded. Any further discussion about suspending the rules? Okay, seeing none, then all in favor say aye.
We need a roll call.
Oh, it's a roll call vote?
Aye.
Suspending? Okay, my apologies. It's a roll call vote for suspending the rules. So, because that's right, because it's a supermajority. So all in favor? So,
Roll call.
yeah, it requires a roll call
Roll call.
vote. So go right ahead. Let's go to the next step for that.
Aye.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so that does pass to suspend the rules. And so, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Rogers, but we're looking now to pass ordinance 2986, amending Chapter 2, Administration of the Code of Ordinances upon its second and third consideration? Is that the way to word it?
Correct.
Okay. And then if that passes, then it's approved tonight. So any further discussion on that? And it is debatable, so if there's any discussion or questions from the public, we can entertain that as well.
Do we need a motion?
Well, the motion has,
So moved.
well, and just for clarification, what's the motion for at this point? Because I
The
thought we
third and
already had the
final.
motion and second.
Third and final reading.
Okay,
We'll move.
right, so motion and seconded for making this the third and final reading, but not approving the item, correct?
No, that would approve it.
So I don't understand that, then why wouldn't we have public comment at this point?
We could.
Okay, so motion and seconded. And then for public comment, does anyone have any questions or comments on this? Okay, it's been motion and seconded, and if no other comment from council, then this requires a roll call vote.
Aye.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Clerk. If you just stand at ease for just a moment. Okay, so item 9 is a resolution approving and adopting the FY22 council goals, work program, and short-term financial plan. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
The motion and seconded. Any council discussion or questions? Any questions or comments from the public?
Seeing none.
Okay, it's been motion and seconded, and this requires a roll call vote.
Aye.
6 voting aye, 1 voting nay, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. That brings us over into new business. On our consent calendar, the following items will be acted on by a voice vote on a single motion without separate discussion unless someone from the council or public requests that a specific item be considered separately. Does any council member wish to pull an item 10 through 13? Seeing none, does anyone from the public wish to pull an item 10 through 13? Mr. Sharp, please. Number 11, okay. Any others? Do we see any from Zoom?
I don't see any.
Okay. So we will pull item 11 and do the rest on a consent. So item 10 is receiving and filing resignations from members of boards and commissions. Item 12 is a resolution approving and authorizing submission of a CLG annual report for Historic Preservation Commission. Item 13 is approving applications for beer permits and liquor licenses. Is there a motion to approve those items minus 11?
So moved. Second.
Motion and seconded, and all in favor say aye.
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 Okay. Opposed? Then those do pass, and it brings us to item 11, which is receiving and filing committee of the whole minutes for February 1st, 2021, relative to the Main Street traffic study. So yes, Mr. Sharp.
Rick Sharp, 1623 Birch Street, Cedar Falls.
Point of order, Mayor. Motion to approve.
Oh, my apologies. Is there a motion to approve? Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Okay, my apologies. Go right ahead, sir.
So I know we're just receiving and filing it, but when will this get brought up for actual full council discussion? And because I do have some questions and concerns about the design project, and so I just wondering when there will be a date for myself and the other members of the public to discuss this.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
My understanding is it's going to be the March 15th meeting is when we're intending on having that back before committee of the whole to answer questions about them. So any other comment? All right, then it's been, item 11 has been motioned and seconded to receive and file the committee of the whole minutes of February 1st. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, so that passes as well, and brings us over to the resolution calendar. The following items will be acted upon by a roll call vote on a single motion without separate discussion unless someone from the council or public requests that this item be considered separately. Does council wish to pull any items 14 through 25?
Mr. Mayor, can I pull item 14?
Item 14,
Item 23.
item 23. Any others? And any others from the public?
Seeing
Okay.
none.
Seeing none, then I will pull item 14 and 23 on request and read the remaining. 15 is a resolution approving and authorizing a change plan agreement with iSolve Benefit Services for the cafeteria plan. Item 16 is a resolution approving and authorizing a 2080 agreement for alcohol enforcement. 17 is a resolution approving and authorizing a service agreement with Benchmark Solutions for police training management software. 18 is a resolution approving the final plat of the Arbor's 4th edition. 19 is a resolution approving and authorizing funds for the purchase of a tandem axle dump truck. 20 is a resolution approving and authorizing execution of a third amendment to the stormwater maintenance repair agreement for Arbor's 4th edition. 21 is a resolution approving and accepting completion of public improvements in the Arbor's 4th edition. 22 is a resolution approving and authorizing execution of a license agreement with Mid-American Energy for the Cedar Heights Drive and Katoski Drive right-of-way. 24 is a resolution setting March 1st, 2021 as the date of public hearing on a lease agreement with the Cedar Falls Municipal Band for the band shell. And then 25 is a resolution setting March 1st, 2021 as the date of hearing for proposed amendments to the Code of Ordinances relative to the adaptive reuse of institutional buildings. Is there a motion to approve these items minus 14 and 23?
So moved.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded, and this requires a roll call vote.
Aye.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That takes us to item 14, which is a resolution approving and authorizing execution of a proposal for retained exclusive search services with Overture Group LLC for recruitment services relative to the position of principal engineer. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and seconded. And Councilmember Dunn, you had a question or comment?
I was just looking for insight as to why is it difficult? Is it like in my field, there's not enough nurses? Why is it difficult to recruit engineers? Is it because there's not enough engineers, or is it something that we're doing as a, is there room for us to improve? Or I was just looking for insight from staff.
I'll start off, and then maybe Director Schrage, or even Director Rodenbeck. But for the most part, it is one of those. It's one of the fields that engineering is very difficult. I think it's also got a lot to do with the field now is very, very competitive with regard to the private sector, and the type of projects you get to work on, the type of clientele you have. So I think it's a number of things, really. So, yeah, I don't know that we can place it, but one of the success stories that we had with this particular firm was we used them, and we were able to hire our city engineer from there. And our city engineer is probably one that never heard of us before the time that we were looking for that particular position. So.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments from council or from the public on this item also? Okay, seeing none, then it's been motioned and seconded and requires a roll call vote.
Aye.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Takes us to item 23, which is resolution approving and authorizing execution of a Sturgis Falls Celebration Agreement for use of city parks and services with Sturgis Falls Celebration Incorporated, and approving public event permits for Live to 9 and Cedar Basin Music Festival. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and seconded. And Councilmember DeBeer, you had a question or comment for this?
Yeah, the subject line for this is really three different items. It's the 2021 to 2022 Sturgis Falls Agreement, and then a special event permit, two different ones. And it seems to me it ought to be a separate vote for each of these three separate items instead of lumping them all together in one vote.
Okay. So with that, would you like to, what's the term again?
I guess I'd like to make an amendment that the first one is a resolution approving and authorizing execution of the Sturgis Falls Celebration Agreement for 2021-2022.
Okay. So it's called dividing the question. So it's been moved to divide the question. And Mr. Rogers, is this a debatable item?
Yes, we don't have a second yet, but it's debatable.
All right.
Second.
So motion seconded, and I'll open up for discussion about dividing this question.
Is there precedent set for council to vote on public event permits? Is that in our ordinances or our code? Shouldn't that just be done by staff and approved per our policy? Why would we have to vote on those?
So for Mr. Gaines, do you have some insight for that?
So that's correct. That would be the, per ordinance, the city council would, has delegated that to staff. But we also realize that The appeal process would be to come towards, to the city council. And in this particular case, we're kind of skipping the middleman being staff, knowing that there's an agreement or an attempted agreement that's between Sturgis Falls, Cedar Basin Jazz Festival, and Live to Nine. And so bringing those together, all together with council consideration.
So all part of the same discussion is a reason to have them considered together. So there's a motion and a second to divide the question. So any other discussion on that?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I believe they're two separate entities, too. We've had an agreement with the Sturgis Falls celebrations for many, many years. And they've done all the great things, as we saw in the PowerPoint. And this add-on event, public event, Live to Nine, is something separate. That weekend, I believe, should be the Sturgis Falls Celebration Agreement first, and then after that agreement is fulfilled, then we should talk about the different public events. But I think they are two separate issues.
Okay, so is the understanding then that we want to, or the motion is to pull Sturgis Falls Celebration, the contract itself as one item, and then the Live to Nine and Cedar Basin Music Festival as one item on its own? Or have three separate?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councilmember Cruz.
I would just comment, I think somebody else was starting to, that we would have two different topics here. One would be the agreement, the second would be the special use for Live to Nine, and then the third, Cedar Basin Music Festival.
Okay. So with that then, for Mr. Rogers, in the rules it states, if a question in debate contains several distinct propositions, any member may have the same divided prior to the vote thereon. So it sounds to me like this doesn't require council approval to split the question.
I believe it's a motion, and so there should be a voice vote on dividing the question.
Okay. So this would be a motion to divide the question into three components. Is that what we had before us? Yeah. So three components. So Sturgis Falls Celebration we would vote on, then vote on the events permits for Live to Nine, and then finally the Cedar Basin Music Festival. So it's been motioned and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so one opposed, 6 aye. Is that correct? Okay, so
To separate them?
to separate it, great. So it has been separated, so I will walk through this individually then. So we're looking for, actually, how do we do this? So do we now have to have motions for each individual one, Mr. Rogers, or is that already on the floor?
Correct.
Okay, so we'll do motions for individuals. So is there a motion to approve and authorize execution of the Sturgis Falls Celebration Agreement?
So move.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Open it for council discussion. Okay, and then any,
Mr. Mayor?
yes, go ahead, Councilmember Cruz.
Thank you. Mr. Stoddard had sent out to all of us what he is calling an affiliate participation agreement. And he's outlined 8 items here that he put together with the idea to develop uniform guidelines to ensure the longevity of Sturgis Falls Celebration into the future for the benefit of Cedar Falls. Looking these over, I feel that they're very relevant and prudent to adopt, and I was going to make a motion to put these into item Q of the master agreement. And there's a sentence in there, this is page 280 in your packet. It says, in a manner consistent with SFC's published policies, guidelines, and then add words and affiliate participation agreement, which would be these 8 items that were circulated.
Okay, so.
And then with that, another component would be the area that this covers. And that would be item number 1 in the master agreement. There's a section that, this section defines the city parks that are being used in Sturgis Falls. I'd like to add that it includes the city block downtown area that was highlighted in January, the council meeting.
So, okay, so to avoid confusion, I'd like to entertain a motion to amend for the item Q component. Do all council members understand what that entails? It's the document provided to be added in under item Q as an amendment. So I have the motion from Councilmember Cruz for that. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been motion and seconded. I'll open it for discussion of that amendment. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Harding first, and then Councilmember Cruz.
Why was this item Q, as we're now calling it, not presented in the original agreement from, why is it being added?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councilmember Cruz.
I guess the way I could answer that is that 8 items were brought forward to us for consideration from Sturgis Falls Celebration Organization as items that they feel is necessary to modify the master agreement to ensure longevity and standardized methods and items to avoid conflicts with future people who want to participate, organizations. They're calling them affiliate participants.
I guess, Mayor, if I could jump into Mr. Harding's question. I guess these 8 items in this affiliate agreement, staff has not seen any of those items, so
I've not seen it either.
Oh.
I haven't seen them either, Mr. Mayor, and so I wouldn't even be able to comment on whether it's proper for council to adopt it as part of the contract.
Yeah, I guess I want to support Sturgis Falls. I love that everything they've given to the community, but I get nervous adding an amendment of this magnitude into a contract without letting our city attorney look at it and seeing, just going over it. It's pretty quick to jump into something without having it fleshed out and really talk about it.
Mr. Mayor.
And also for the public to review as well.
Mr.
Yeah,
Mayor.
that's also true.
Yes, Councilmember Cyrus.
These different 8 amendments, I've looked them over. I wish everybody had the chance. They make it a different vote on the other 2. It's really quite fair in the sharing of the costs. And as we've seen, Sturgis Falls has done an absolute fantastic job of keeping everything free. That's really what this helps to do, is to keep it all free, and anyone who wants to come down and be a participant or be a vendor, this just lays out a little more of the rules for them. To keep this a free event, and I believe it's the biggest one, I know it's the biggest one in the state, I don't know in the nation, but this is a huge event, and it's a great thing. I've sponsored the Jazz Kids. It's the little 7th and 8th graders come up and play their horns and do their solos. I think I've sponsored that for 20 years, something like that. So I love jazz as well, and I like that jazz wants to be included, but we always have to watch that this will go forward. Now, this agreement's only for 2 years, and Frank likes to review things, so after a couple of years, he can review it. And the thing about it is, this lets us move forward with everything else so that they can get their bands together, the jazz club or the jazz side can do their thing, and then everybody can kind of get along. I'm in favor of this 100%.
Mayor?
Yes, I'll bid for the public. So, Mr. Sharp, if you'd like to come forward.
Rick Sharp, 1623 Birch Street. I was waiting for the public forum to talk about this before you guys start. Whatever. This is sounds like it's document that was presented that the public has not had access to review or read. So therefore, I would propose that this document gets tabled so everybody has a chance to review it. Also, for separating the 3 items into separate votes, I would encourage the council to approve the public venues, the public event request for that weekend. The city is not in the business to pick winners or losers in this. Every group that wants to put on something during whatever weekend, they know the risk. They know what they're going up against. It's on them to decide if they want to hold an event or not either. And so I would encourage the council, if we're going to move forward with this, to approve. I don't even know if the council has to approve it, because before you never had to approve it. It just automatically got approved by the public safety director and the public works department. So there's a lot of confusion going on right here. And until the public has a chance to review the new information provided by the Sturgis Falls Committee, until the city attorney has a chance to review it, we should not be voting on this at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. And I do agree with that. This information hasn't come forward to staff for review. The public hasn't seen it. So I'm going to have to call that amendment out of order and bring us back to the original. It could be tabled. If you want to review that item, you're allowed to do that. But I don't believe it's proper for us to consider something under an amendment for item Q at this point. So that carries us, we're still at our original motion of approving and authorizing execution of the Sturgis Falls Agreement, and still open, the floor is open for further discussion.
We have public comment.
Okay, excellent.
Kyle Henderson.
Name again?
Kyle Henderson.
So, Mr. Henderson, the floor is yours, sir. Name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. Kyle Henderson, 1008 Eric in Cedar Falls. My comment, I believe, maybe because it's been out of order, ruled out of order, but I was also objecting to the amendments that were forth in the agreement with Sturgis Falls. We were negotiating with them as part of the Live Tonight agreement, and it is different from what I had been in negotiations with them. So, again, I would like to allow this amendment to be put on.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Henderson.
Thank you.
That also ties us back. There was a second motion or amendment that Councilmember Cruz had proposed of changing the area around, or the area under consideration. And just to be clear on the contractual agreement, for Mr. Rogers, would it be proper or would it be in order for council to consider changes to a contract that had already been signed by the other party? Or is this just a straight up or down vote at this point?
Any changes to the proposed contract made by council would have to go back to the other party for their approval.
Okay, so if council makes the decision to change the terms, then it's basically an unsigned contract at that point. It has to go back to Sturgis Falls for consideration? Is that
right, there'd be no meeting of the minds yet until the other party agreed to the changes.
Okay. All right. So
Mr. Mayor?
clear on that. Yes, go ahead, Councilmember Cruz.
Given what we've been saying here, I think it's to table this to get the 8 items in the hands of city staff, Mr. Rogers, and you, Mr. Mayor, and disseminate it to the public for comment.
Okay, so
for item Q and then item amendments that I have proposed.
Okay, so, and we don't necessarily need the reasons listed in the tabling, but that's the understanding of knowing that having the motion on the floor to table this. Is there a second to table?
Second.
Okay, motion and second to table. And yes, Councilmember Dwyer.
I know that this contract expires on March 2nd. Do we have another meeting? I don't have a calendar in front of me. Do we have a meeting on March
1st. Okay, thank you. Good point of clarification. So there's a motion and a second, correct, to table this item until the March 1st meeting for the opportunity to review the 8 items document. So tabling is...
Mr. Mayor, excuse me.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Rogers.
just for clarification, so it's a motion to postpone consideration to a definite time, which is the March 1st meeting. Motion to table has specific connotation.
Okay, yeah, so this would, in fact, yeah, be a motion to postpone until the March 1st meeting for consideration.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, so that's motion, seconded. Is there a second? Okay, so this motion and seconded, and
Excuse me, is this just for the first item? We've separated the three items?
Yes,
We're
this is-
tabling one at a time?
yep, tabling one at a time. So with postpone indefinitely, is that a voice or a
It's
roll
a
call?
voice vote.
Voice vote, okay. So the motion is on the floor for Sturgis Falls Celebration Agreement to postpone this until the March 1st meeting. That has been motioned and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, opposed?
Nay.
Okay, so I would need a show of hands. So all in favor, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. All opposed? 1, 2, and for Councilmember Cruz, what was yours? Yay.
I was for tabling
Tabling. Okay, so
or postponing. Postponing.
okay, so that does pass to postpone this until our March 1st meeting. So we'll look to have that document distributed to staff and to myself so that it can be reviewed, and then will be part of the discussion for the next meeting. Now, that does still keep the two other items on the table. So we'll consider, or on the floor, so we'll consider those now. The first is a motion to approve a public event permit for Live to 9.
Move approval.
Motion.
Second.
And seconded. Any council discussion?
I would ask again, why are we voting on this?
I would like to table them to have them all together, because I'd like to know what if there's been agreement or not between the parties.
Mhm.
And that's one of the reasons I pulled it, was to find out what agreements there were. So I think they should all be held together on that March 1st date.
Okay, so there's a motion to table the Live to
Postpone.
9 vote.
It would be a postpone till March
Postpone,
1st
yeah,
again.
postpone to the March 1st meeting.
Postpone.
Second.
I'll second that.
Motion and seconded. Any discussion?
Yeah, I thought there had been discussion and an agreement, and that's what we were voting on tonight. And now we've tabled everything.
It was
Am
my
I wrong?
understanding that there might not have
There-
been
something's
I
agreement.
didn't agree.
Pardon?
There wasn't any agreement between the two.
Okay.
Okay, so it's been motioned to table, or excuse me, to postpone to the March 1st meeting, the Live to 9 event. Any other discussion? Yeah, Mr. Frine. Name and address for the record, please.
TJ Frine, 1319 Austin Way. Again, just to echo what one council member keeps asking, what are we even doing? I think there's just confusion on everybody's part with this. And the council's never voted on it, as talked about earlier, until an appeals process. And it was said that we're eliminating the middleman by doing this. So either we're anticipating one getting turned down and not the other, and then an appeals process happening anyways, or we're just getting putting the cart before the horse here. Thanks.
William.
I guess I'm okay, I guess, with postponing if we want to see them all together, but I would, again, like the process to play out as it should, and I don't feel like there's a reason for us to vote on it and to use Mr. Friend's statement, put the cart before the horse. If someone wants to appeal it and follow the process, I'm perfectly fine with that, but I don't see why we need to vote on something ahead of there even being an appeal.
Okay.
That's just 2 cents or 1.5 cents, depending on who you talk to.
Okay. Any other discussion or comments from council? So the motion is to postpone. Yes, Councilmember Cruz, please.
To Councilmember DeVere's comment that we're postponing what I've called the master agreement, that would have an effect on the other events because they're the same weekend. So I would think all of these would be postponed together.
Okay. So any other comments? Then it's been motioned and seconded to postpone Live to 9 to March 1st. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, so Live Tonight is postponed to the 1st. And that also puts us into the Cedar Basin Music Festival to approve the public event permit for that Cedar Basin Festival.
Motion to postpone until March 1st.
It's been motioned to postpone that until
Second.
March 1st. Motion and seconded. Additional discussion? Okay, seeing none.
We have one from the public, Kyle Henderson.
Okay, Kyle Henderson, go ahead, sir.
Good evening. Again, 108 Derrick Road. The Cedar Basin Music Festival, it is not having any negotiations or it's not been affiliated or any connection with the Sturgis Fall Celebration Committee in any way in the past. And they're not in any sort of agreement or negotiations with them. That's a completely separate agreement and would not need to be, in my opinion, brought up at the same time. It's been going for 40 plus years and is not in any sort of negotiations discussions.
Okay, thank you. So for those who didn't hear it, my understanding was that his comment was the Cedar Basin Music Festival isn't part of the controversy or the discussions here and should be voted on. Did I capture that right, Mr. Henderson?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any other comments or questions from council?
So to clarify, the Cedar Basin Music Festival has been happening for 40 years in the same spot. It's been in the same spot. We're not changing the location or anything.
I've only been here 15 years, so I don't know if it's been here all 40 years in the same spot, but I think relatively.
All right. Well, then I would vote, I don't know, that we vote on this one.
Okay, so, and that's when it'll come up for postponing to March 1st. So if there's no other comments or questions from council, then it's been motioned and seconded to postpone the approval of Cedar Basin Music Festival event permit to March 1st. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay, so ayes, raise your hand, please. 1, 2, 3, and then 4 with Councilmember Cruz. And opposed, raise your hand. 1, 2, so 2 and 3. So 4 voting aye, 3 voting nay. And so that does pass to postpone this vote until March 1st, along with the others. So that concludes our resolution calendar and moves us into bills and claims. Is there a motion to approve bills and claims from February 15th?
So moved.
Second.
The motion and seconded, open for council discussion. And for the public discussion? Okay, so motion and seconded, and this requires a roll call vote.
Aye.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This brings us over to council referrals. Do any council members have a referral they wish to bring forward tonight? Councilmember Harding.
Yes, I have it written down so that I don't stumble. I would like to make a referral to Committee of the Whole to have staff present information pertaining to the following options. A, streamlining or simplifying the process of expanding outdoor seating for local businesses. B, the possibilities pertaining to the temporary suspension of city code where appropriate. And C, other possible creative, viable options that would help local businesses pertaining to expanding outdoor seating for the spring and summer season. Kind of a long
And
one.
I'm not even going to pretend to be able to read.
I have it written down. I can send it to you if it passes.
Could you send it to me too?
Yes, if it passes.
I'll second.
Okay, but it's been motioned
I'll second that.
and seconded. I'm assuming everybody knows what it said. And the information was provided, I know, from Councilmember Harding, an account or an email to council of what some of that issue was. And this was stemming from a request from a business owner on College Hill. So is there any further discussion needed on this item before making that referral to Committee of the Whole? Okay, so it has been motioned and seconded, and all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
All voting aye, it sounds like. So that does pass, and will be referred to committee of the whole. We'll look to have that very soon because of the timeliness of this issue. Any other referrals from?
Well, I don't know.
Mr. Mayor?
Just a moment. Frank Thera had the floor first.
I'm not sure how to make it other than what I brought up earlier, and would like to have a discussion about perhaps building in some sort of review process of our poultry ordinance that is expanded from something fairly simple to fairly complex, and could lead to issues. So I'd like to have some discussion about how do we monitor that if it has problems.
Okay, what if it was referred to committee of the whole for?
That's fine. It's something that has to happen down the road anyway. The ordinance is going to pass, so I just like some assurance that it won't get out of hand.
Okay, so does council have any objection to that, like the idea of referring something to close to a year in advance? I don't think we've done that before, but okay.
That's fine.
Can staff comment on a process for that, and we can make the motion to just have staff do that rather than having it go to committee? Do you follow me?
So just refer to staff then?
Well, is there an easy answer to this? Can staff say, yeah, we can add that to the calendar to check it out in a year? Or is it more complicated than that?
I think we can do it either way if you want to put a specific date in there, or if you just want to say, hey, staff, bring this back in a year. We can accommodate either way.
What do you think, Frank?
That's fine. I just don't. I anticipate there'll be a lot of calls, and I'd like to monitor that and see if it becomes an issue. So
Okay.
yeah, I'm fine with that as long as there's something built in,
Yeah,
and the
so-
public.
So we talked, okay, go ahead, I'm sorry.
And the public knows we're thinking about it.
Okay. So we talked to kind of build the recipe for what this would look like, but there's not a motion yet on the floor for it. So
Staff gets it.
What's that?
Sounds like staff understands. and
I still need a motion.
What about a referral for staff to present
Mr. Mayor?
a one-year summary of the chicken ordinance at committee of the whole?
Okay, so that's motioned. And is there a second?
That works, thanks. Sure.
So a motion for a one-year, a referral for a one-year staff update on the chicken ordinance, if it approves. Okay, so it's been motion. Is there a second on that? Did we get a second? Okay, so motion and seconded. Any other council discussion for that?
Mr. Cruz, that's
Yes, Councilmember Cruz, go ahead.
I guess my only comment was I thought we had discussion in previous council meetings where there's going to be an ongoing review based on the nuisance ordinances, but this, I think, formalizes it a little bit more.
Okay, super.
That's all.
Thank you, Councilmember Cruz. So it's been motioned and seconded. And if there's no other discussion on that referral for a one-year staff review to council in committee of the whole, then all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, so that does pass, and we'll just have that on the schedule for a year from now to do that review, assuming it passes next council meeting. So with that, do we have any other referrals for tonight?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Cruz.
Thank you. I'd like to make a referral to evaluate and contrast the complete street version from 2009 and 2013 as it relates to the bike plan. My understanding, the bike plan hasn't been evaluated for quite a number of years.
So I didn't catch the first part of that. It's a referral for,
To compare complete streets 2009 versus 2013 version as it relates to the bike plan.
so it's a referral to compare complete streets 2009 to 2013 as it relates to the bike plan. Is there a second for that?
Second.
So motion and seconded. Additional discussion from council?
could we just, if, I'm okay with getting a presentation about the 2009 to 2013 versions, but could we just make it comprehensive of the versions and not limit it to the scope of just the bike plan, maybe? Seems like it would be more effective to just compare the complete street policies side by side.
So that's an amendment request.
So yes, I would make the amendment to it to just compare the plans side by side and not focus only on the bike aspect.
Second.
Okay, and I'll try to tidy this up a bit. Councilmember Cruz, would you be willing to withdraw your original motion and have it to not be just connected to the bike plan itself?
Sure, that's fine, as long as it includes the bike plan, I'm fine with that.
Okay, so it'll.
I was over clarifying it.
You bet. So it'll strike bike plan then and be comprehensive. So.
And I'll withdraw my motion of my amendment.
Okay. Well, so that would mean for Councilmember Cruz, I understand we have that motion on the floor to refer to compare and contrast the complete streets policy for 2009 to 2013 comprehensively. Does that capture that effectively?
What?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, there's some question there.
may I ask where we're referring this to?
Yes. Is this to
Committee of the Whole.
Okay. So referring to Committee of the Whole, a compare and contrast of the complete streets policy from 2009 and to 2013.
Whose motion is this at this point?
Councilmember Cruz was the one who brought it forward.
Okay.
Seconded by Mr.
And then
I second.
Tyre.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Harding. So I'll open it for discussion.
What's the purpose of comparing the 2009 plan, which we don't have anymore, with the 2015 plan? What's the I mean, I'm curious. Do you want to reincorporate some things from the 2009 plan, or what?
I think that, Mr. Mayor,
Certainly, please, go ahead, Councilmember Cruz.
we've had quite a discussion at goal setting and want to spend a little more time fleshing out and clarifying the components as far as what we have to do and can do, and if I call it the discrepancies between plans, the differences between the two plans became evident when we were talking about Main Street and then other components of the bike plan. So I wanted to do a deep dive into it and have a dedicated discussion for it.
Okay, other questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Cyrus.
We just briefly went over it at the goal setting, and I feel that it would be nice to have more options, which the 09 plan had as compared to mandatory in the 13. And I'd like to look at it a little bit harder is all. I'm with Councilman Cruz and Simon. I think it's a good idea.
Okay. So motion and seconded, further discussion? All right, so that motion is to refer to Committee of the Whole to compare and contrast the 2009 and the 2013 plans comprehensively and if nothing else, then all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, so all voting aye, raise right hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. All voting for 5. Okay, thank you, Councilmember Cruz. All voting nay. 1 and 2. So 5 to 2, that does pass to refer this to Committee of the Whole. And any other referrals for tonight? You seeing none? That moves us over.
Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Cruz. Sorry about that.
Can we yet put a timeline on the whole presentation? Sooner than later, I guess, or before the future discussion on Main Street?
Okay, so as it relates to the discussion on Main Street, for staff, is that even going to be a possibility? Because I think that's coming up March 15th.
We could probably move it in if the council wants to move it, but something's got to bump. I mean,
Well, I have a question. Even if we move it in, because I want to see the plans, I'm just interested in learning. But even if we move it in, we have policy in place that we would then have to amend. So doing it before March 15th doesn't necessarily make sense to me, because we wouldn't be able to amend the policy I guess we could if we put it on the thing. I don't know. I'm interested in seeing the presentation, but I don't think it has to be before Main Street. That's my thought.
Okay, well, we'll say sooner rather than later, but
Mayor?
yes, Councilmember Cruz.
I believe the March 15th is just the whole anyway, so that's not a binding situation, discussion. So to Council Member Simon Harding's point, can adopt and amend policy.
You were a little broken up.
Anytime.
Could you repeat that last?
To Council Member Harding's point that the Main Street discussion is March 15th, Committee of the Whole. So that's an informal discussion of sorts, so we can amend policy on the way.
We reviewing policy or amending it?
Okay, well, we'll say we'll commit to sooner rather than later, but we don't have an exact date for that.
If I'm understanding what's happening here, I mean, we hired a consultant based on a set of guidelines to design Main Street, and at least what I'm kind of understanding is those guidelines are what Councilman Cruz does not want to go by, which would bring the complete streets thing back to the table to be potentially overturned, which changes the Main Street project. Yeah, just for clarity's sake, I think that's what's being played here.
Okay, well, we do have that item approved, so.
And it seemed to me if we're talking about, I'm not sure why we want to compare to complete street plans since we don't use the first one anymore. But it seems to me that should have been a discussion at goal setting as opposed to now that we've applied those policies over 6 months or a year of planning, and now we are going to change it. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me. We had goal setting, we talked about long-range plans built on other long-range plans, and now we're looking at tweaking another plan that's been put together, recommended twice, but we're going to review policies. It's just.
Well, and even with that,
like
it would require a council majority to even approve any changes.
Well, yeah.
I see what you're saying, Frank, and I see what Councilmember Miller's saying, but we did kind of compare the plans at goal setting, and there were some things mentioned by Councilmember DeBurr that did make sense to possibly look at which one we were going with. Either way, it's still a complete street thing. I don't personally look at it as a tied in with Main Street necessarily, but I guess that's all.
Okay, and we do have to be careful here because we're
veering off.
discussing outside of a motion, which has already been approved. I mean, I think it's important to clarify that a bit, but I would want us to make sure that if we're having discussion, it was something that was included on an agenda for the public to be part of. So I'll discuss with staff about timing and work through that. Any other referrals for tonight? Okay, seeing none, then for updates, any council updates for tonight? Yes, Councilmember Harding, go ahead first.
I just had a question. This year's been a lot of snow, and I've had a lot of citizens reach out, ask about snow ordinance removal information. I was wondering if there was a way that maybe we could do what the feasibility of possibly doing a campaign, whether it's social media or putting something in the Courier, just that gets our policy out there, because the microphone bit me. Just gets the policy out there, because out of sight, out of mind, so is that a big ask, or is that possible to do something and get the word out there?
Okay, and that will be discussed, like the policies and things, we'll talk about that tonight, but to your point, having an outreach effort.
Yeah.
That's a good question. So if we can put a pin in that
We can hold it, that's fine.
are there any other updates? I think Councilmember Sires, did you have one?
Oh, yeah, I just had a little bit of an update. I wanted to thank the 6th and 7th graders at Blessed Maria Santa Middle School in Waterloo. they asked me to speak there last Wednesday, and we went into the gymnasium. There must have been 100 students, and we had a great time. We talked about, one of my favorite things, we talked about the Constitution. If anybody would like one of these copies of the Constitution or Bill of Rights, they can jump on my Cyrus for Iowa, I'll send you one. But it was so much fun to be with those kids, and they were so excited, and then the principal had said, oh, it's kind of a rowdy group, and I said, well, that's kind of the way I grew up. So we had a great time. We talked about hobbies, we talked about the Constitution, we talked about socialism, we talked about all kinds of things. And what a great bunch of smart students, and it makes me feel good about our future when I get around a lot of kids like that. And I did learn that I'm an old man. They asked me how old I was, and when I said 60, you should have heard them groan. And they asked me who my favorite actor was. I said John Wayne. They'd never heard of him. And then Aerosmith, they'd never heard of them. And pretty soon I understood how old I really was. So anyway, I want to thank those kids for being so good and for being such a bright future. And I think it was just a fun afternoon. That's all. Thanks.
Any other council updates for
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Dunn?
Kind of to tie into what Councilman Harding was saying with all the snow, I was wondering if we could get a staff update as to, people voice concern for the piles of snow, and if the snow is getting cleared by their neighbors in a timely fashion. A couple years ago, I remember there was an update when I was watching a council meeting, and you don't realize what all our public works staff does. And so I'm wondering if we could get kind of a little update as to how they've been handling our big amounts of snow and this extreme cold, and why maybe our roads don't look perfect when it's minus 14.
Okay, and we'll cover that in staff updates. Are there any other council updates? Okay, seeing none, then I'll turn it over to staff. So we have a couple of questions for you and Public Works.
So Mayor, I think Director Schrage and will cover some of the Public Works and snow removal and some of the things they've been dealing with. And then Director Sheets will maybe go over into what some of the requirements are with regard to snow removal on your personal and property and business property. So
excellent. Thank you.
Start with Director Schrage.
Director Schrage, the floor is yours, sir.
So I'll kind of kick it off before I turn it over here to Brian. But a lot of our crews have spent significant time, especially this winter, with the removal activities. Actually, in the last 6 weeks, a lot more time. It's almost a daily activity now. And I think a lot of people don't realize that, the temperatures, the sun, and there's a lot of things that come into play here in regards to how our streets look, some of the intersections and the quantity of snow that we get. So Brian will cover some of that more in detail. But I also wanted to update everyone again. Seems to be on a 2-week increment now here that we declared another snow emergency for downtown and College Hill areas for tomorrow, Tuesday night, which is the 16th, into Wednesday morning to get some of that material out of there and hauled out to provide for some more storage. So I'll turn it over to Brian.
All right, thank you. Mr. Heath, the floor is yours, sir.
Schrage, Mayor and Council, I'm just going to walk you through our process quick on from start to finish on a snow removal, and then we'll talk about some of the factors related to that, and some of the follow-up work that we do. So first of all, in our decision-making process, we don't take that lightly. We know that we're taking care of the city, we're taking care of commerce, we're taking care of the public, schools, things like that. So when it starts snowing, our guys get busy, and I believe they do a tremendous job. So between the supervisors and myself, we'll make a plan typically when we see the weather coming in, whether it's going to be a 2-inch snowfall, whether it's going to be a 10-inch snowfall. We're going to get out there and take care of the arterials first and foremost. That's our main focus when the snow starts to fall, is to take care of them priority streets. As the snow continues and the storm progresses, that's when we start really getting into how much snow are we going to get and how long is it going to last and what are we going to do in terms of a full plow. Typically, our policy states that a 3-inch snow is when we commit to a full plow, and that means the entire city. So we're watching that throughout the evening, throughout the night, throughout the day, whenever it occurs. I mean, we can't dictate when the snow comes down, so we've got to make it happen when it comes down. So would we like to have it snow in the middle of the night and clean it up for the early morning commute? We'd love that every time. That has happened on a few occasions this year, but but not very often. Unfortunately, we've been hit mostly in the afternoon when we've had to deal with the evening commute. So we're going to focus on them arterial streets, and then we're going to commit to the full plow. When we go into a full plow, we're talking not only going back over the priorities in the secondary arterial streets, but we're also going into all the residentials. We use about 22 truck plows. There's 5 specialty pieces of equipment, and then we've added something more recently, the past few years, where we send out smaller trucks into the cul-de-sacs to speed up our efforts and get it through them residential streets quicker. So it takes a lot of time with a large truck to get through the cul-de-sacs in this city, and there are a number of them. So we send them smaller trucks out, and we'll often get questions on why did I see a small truck down at the end of my street clearing snow, but yet the street hasn't been plowed. And that's the reason for that. These trucks are going around doing all them cul-de-sacs so that the big trucks don't have to spend their time in them. They can spend a lot more time on the city streets doing what they do, and that's plow the snow. With that, we get done typically in 8 to 10 hours with a full plow, depending on the duration of the snow event. We like to wait for that snow to come to a near end before we take off and do a full plow, but that's not always possible. We'll hit it, and then if we have to, we'll go back over it, especially the priority streets. So some of the follow-up work that we do, and this would be the next day after the snow is stopped and we've done our plowing, we'll go back in, we'll do our calendar parking, we'll go back through where cars have pulled out, we'll do a number of things to clean up after the fact. When our guys are plowing, there's a lot of question too about blocking corners, intersections, where a residential street would approach an arterial street. The snow gets pushed up to where it's an unnatural accumulation and it's tough to get through for the residents. That's unfortunate. We instruct our drivers each fall to try to wrap that around the corner a little bit, but that's not always possible. There's always a lot of heavy traffic in certain cases, and then just the layout of the intersection makes it very difficult. We've also had a lot of questions on why one section of the intersection gets more snow, why one quadrant would get more snow than another, and that's simply because of the layout of how you take off when you plow a street. It may be difficult to comprehend, but it just happens that when you come back up on the right-hand side and you curb that snow, one corner is going to get more snow than another. So we deal with that too, and we try to equalize it. Our guys are instructed in the fall to split the middle. In other words, put equal amounts on both sides of the street. But when you come back on that final pass and you go to curb, there's always a corner that typically gets more snow. So that's kind of the situation we have with that. Comparable winters this winter, in my opinion, it did come quite frequently through the month of January. However, I do feel this is more of a normal winter for Iowa. Last year, 13 inches of snow. This year, we've had up to 35 already. So our average is 32 inches of snow per year. And I think we're near normal. Although, if you recall, we had hardly any snow in November. No snow in November, a little bit in December. We started in October with a snowfall where we had to plow, but then it dried up until the end of December, and we ended up plowing almost all of January, and so far quite a bit of February. Now we get to the cold spell that we're into now. We've had a couple 2-inch snowfalls throughout the cold spell, and it's been difficult to take care of. When that bond gets on the pavement, it's tough. Your salt only works. Our salt and brine is what we use for our de-icers, and that only works to approximately 10 degrees effectively. Anything colder than that, your salt loses its heat, if you will, or its ability to melt. So we're using as much as we can without affecting the environment. I mean, if we wanted to, we could go out there and we could pour the salt on and melt it off, but that's not good for the environment. It's not good for anything. We do what we can. We have metered units on our trucks. The majority of our trucks have ground speed sensing units so that they can meter out the amount of salt that we prescribe for the temperature, the amount of snow, that type of thing. So our technology's come a long ways, and I think we're doing a good job. But when Mother Nature throws you snow in the middle of 0-degree weather for several events, it's just tough to deal with. In fact, these last 2 events on our arterial streets, we simply just had to plow the snow off the streets and use our salt, our de-icer on the intersections as much as possible. So that's kind of how we've had to deal with this one. I do know we got some warmer weather coming up, looking forward to next week. We know that we've got some hard pack on the residential streets, and we know that's going to loosen up, and it's going to loosen up fairly quickly. So our intent is, once that does start occurring, we're going to go out there and we're going to plow that off. We're going to try to get our streets back to bare pavement as quickly as we can once it starts melting again for us. So we just ask residents to bear with us, and if there are situations that, sometimes that we're not aware of, we certainly appreciate the phone call, letting us know if there's some assistance that can be provided. So that's kind of where we're at with that. Now, then moving into our snow hauling, as Director Schrage mentioned, we do have our third snow hauling event coming up Tuesday night into Wednesday. We'll be starting at 11 p.m. down on the parkade, and then we'll follow up on the College Hill. In terms of the high school, we've been pretty proactive with that. We've actually blown snow from the high school 6 times this year now, as opposed to the 3 times down on the parkade and College Hill. So we try to get up there as quick as we can. We can usually come in the morning, say 5 a.m., and have the high school taken care of in an hour or so. And that really alleviates some of the congestion up there for busing, for the students that drive, et cetera. So that makes a big difference if we can get up there and get them taken care of. It makes things a lot smoother for the high school students. Other than that, like I said, we're trying to deal with the cold snap that we're having here, and I think our guys have done a tremendous job. They've worked countless hours this winter so far, and they're all just, they've shown up for work. I mean, we've had almost zero issue with COVID issues, so we're pretty happy with that. I think our guys are doing a tremendous job of their social distancing and taking care of themselves away from work, as well as during the day when they are at work. So that's important. If we got impacted at our facility with COVID, that would be a huge issue for us in terms of snow and ice control and any other maintenance that we do. So I got to hand it to the staff for taking care of themselves. And with that, unless there's questions.
Yeah, so before we move to Director Sheets, does council have any questions for Mr. Heath? Is Councilmember done?
I don't have a question, but thank you.
You're welcome.
Maybe.
Do a great job, Brian.
Thank you.
Good job. Thanks to all the staff. Maybe Director Sheets will answer this, but what about policy for the sidewalks for residents, so that it's in their minds that, because I talked to a resident who said they have sidewalk behind their house, and they were actually unaware that they even had to shovel the sidewalk that far behind their house. So maybe some clarification or ways to get that out to the public, like when they are responsible for how many inches,
Did that fall under what Director Sheets was going to talk about?
Okay, that's
And let me add just one thing in terms of the trail clearing that we're doing. There's a significant number of trails that we do take care of now, and prior to this winter, we had, I believe it was 5 miles. I don't recall, but I think it's doubled since then. And what we're doing now is there's a number of trails, and I believe it was approved here at council a couple weeks ago or a month ago, in terms of doing the entire Green Hill stretch. And we will do our best to get at them as soon as we can after a snowfall. We've got Green Hill Road now, we got Lone Tree Road from Center to Hiawatha, and then we've also added First Street from Hudson Road out to Union Road, and then Union Road from 1st to 12th as a kind of a follow-up. And then we're kind of a priority, secondary, if you will, in terms of clearing as well. So we're going to take care of those as soon as we can after a snow event. Obviously, with the warmer weather we had experienced earlier this winter, and people were wanting to get out, it was a blessing for them to be able to get out on a dry trail. So we're going to try to continue doing that. However, right now, our focus is going to be getting that bond off of the pavement to start with, and then we'll focus on them when time permits.
So Mr. Heath, is that where you'd want to look at the winter trails map of maybe council looking to update that? Like add Green Hill Road and fund it to be able to do those kind of clearings? Is that what's required next?
And we have updated our trail map to include Green Hill at this time. With time permitting, we've added First Street and Union, as I mentioned. So those are things to look at in the future. I know with the new high school coming out on 27th, we're going to have additional trails out 27th Street, and then the new trail being built on Union Road, we'll have that as well once the high school becomes populated.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Heath? Okay, thank you very much. Please pass along to your crews our appreciation for their excellent work. And Director Schreets.
All right, so our city ordinance calls for the abutting property owner to clear the natural accumulation of snow and ice for the sidewalk that abuts their property. And so the way that and then it also goes on to say within a reasonable amount of time. And so we've usually applied a 48-hour rule to that being a reasonable amount of time. And so if after 48 hours we receive a complaint or we notice in kind of a high traffic area, we might notice some areas that need to be cleared or repeat issues that we've seen before, so they're going to be a little bit more on our radar. Those are the ones where we will contact a property owner, we'll send them a notice, and they have 48 hours from the time we send the notice to remove it. Otherwise, the city will go out and remove it and assess it against their property. So that's for natural accumulation. So we've had several cases this year already in this season that we sent out a notice maybe and then it snowed again. Well, then we start over on that. So that's why sometimes we do have people that express concerns because they complained about a specific property and it didn't get cleared. And sometimes it's often because then there ends up being another snow event. We've had that a couple times this year. What we've also had is that people have submitted concerns about sidewalks that abut a property, but they're maybe not I'll say the primary sidewalk. So that's been kind of the area that I think has recently come up is how do we get to those areas? And so that might be something that we need to clarify further because the ordinance does say abutting the property. And so maybe that brings into question exactly how that should go. But we have not cleared those in the past. We have not asked property owners to clear those. But with the complaints that we've received, we've reached out to some about that recently.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor?
Any other questions?
To Director Sheets, does that, after the second notice, does it say for a landlord or whatnot? I've gotten calls from a couple constituents regarding rental properties, and I assume city obviously tries to work with landlord or homeowners in whatever shape they are, but does landlord accountability get triggered after 2 warnings on a rental property, or how does that?
It's triggered in the first instance because we don't send a notice until we've gone to verify that it actually is an issue. And so that's the time at which then points would be applied.
Can you say that again? Sorry.
It would be the first time that if we receive a complaint because we have to go out and verify that it's a valid issue, that it does exist, and that's the criteria for assigning points.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Yes, Mr. Heath.
I'll just add one thing, excuse me. In terms of the intersections I mentioned earlier with snow piles up, we do have a number of concerns that come to us regarding sight distance or the impact it has with sidewalks. And when we get those calls, we're going to go out and as time permits, we're going to knock the intersections down, maybe haul snow out of the intersections if we have to, or just push it back if we have room to do so. But we're going to do our best to clear those out so that, 1, the sidewalk is passable, and 2, that it reduces the sight issue that we might have coming up to intersections.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else for snow removal? Okay, seeing none, we also have a update from the library about their opening. So is that Kelly Stern? Do we have you on tonight, Director Stern?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
The library reopened to the public today for limited capacity browsing hours. And 183 brave souls came out in the cold, come back to the library for the first time since the end of October. We also had 45 people take advantage of our curbside service today as well. That will continue. Go back to business as usual, and maybe even then, so many people seem to like curbside service. We anticipate that more people will take advantage of browsing hours the longer that we're open. It takes a while for word to spread, and we're looking forward to seeing all of our patrons and new ones to come and visit us now that the doors are open again to the public. We will remain open for browsing as long as Black Hawk County remains below the high-risk level for COVID-19, according to our pandemic plan.
All right. Thank you very much.
Any questions?
Yes, any questions from council? Okay, well then, thank you so much. It's quite exciting news for the library fans out there, and look forward to seeing you soon. And with that, so I have no other announcements from staff that I know of. Anything else to cover? Well, before we adjourn, I do want to make note of Mr. Gaines's Ruby anniversary with the city, which is tomorrow. I gave him his pin today. He celebrates 15 years. So congratulations. Yay. No speech. No speech. Excellent. Well, on that note, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A motion and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Whoa, we are adjourned. Who was that?